All right, welcome to episode number 60 of The Grail. Incredible guest today, I got to tell you. Anybody that knows me over the years knows that motorcycles are absolutely my life. They were my life since the early days, you know. There's those people out there that got the two-wheel fever. And most of the time, it came from a little machine called the mini bike. And I remember my neighbor, his name was Dominic, and he had like a rattled can green mini bike. And I wanted that thing bad. I was obsessed with it. You know, it comes from Evel Knievel, an Easy Rider, and all of that. You get that two-wheel fever, and I had to have that mini bike, and Dominic sold it to me. I got a paper route, saved up money. I think it was like $30 he sold it to me. And I got that thing, and it was a piece of shit. It caught on fire the first day I owned it. I almost lit myself on fire. I got my pants and stuff, and I had to hide it from my mom. You know, I hid it in a buddy's side of his house, under like an old green tarp. And that was it. Little two-wheel fever. From there, I went on to a piece of shit Yamaha RD, I think it was, 80 that blew up right away, seized motor. And then my mom said, well, I'll let you get a dirt bike. You know, I finally told her I just got to have a dirt bike. But you have to, you know, get a job and save up for it. So I just kept saving and shit, I was doing everything back then. Just dumb stuff like, you know, collecting recyclable bottles. Oh man, recycling, paper route, whatever. Mowing lawns, I mowed lawns, everything I could do. And I got a Suzuki RM80, 1978. Steel tank model, two-stroke kickstart. The smell. That's the smell of two-stroke in the morning. God, there's no smell like two-stroke. People that know, I mean, you know, sometimes you get a whiff of it when those fuckers are walking around with those leaf blowers. I hate the leaf blowers, but it's straight up like a flashback. I get the smell and I'm like, oh, two-stroke. Anyway, that's a long way to go on the intro, but I'm always fascinated. There's either people that love motorcycles or they hate them. There's those Clint Eastwood get off my lawn people like, they're loud and they're bullshit, and the people that ride them are dirtbags. They rob and steal. Just all that fucking crazy shit. Imagine having that kind of blood in you where you wake up in the morning and you go, you know what, I fucking hate motorcycles. But there's people out there like it, man. But I bet a lot of people are loving them right now. In this incredible, insane $6-7 a gallon. I haven't rode in a couple years because I got ran over from some meth head, hit and run, and fucked me up pretty good for a few years now. Easily, I think it's been like almost 5 years or something. I don't know. But, you know, damaged vertebrae, herniated discs, broke ribs, all that shit. And I'm still, you know, I'm back to normal now, but heavy PTSD. And I can't really have a backpack or helmet on my head because of the surgeries I got. But I did ride after I got ran over, and I haven't rode in a while now. And I miss it big time. And today I took a spin over to look at some of the greatest custom motorcycles I've ever seen. My guest today is Gard Hollinger, co-owner of Arch Motorcycles with Keanu Reeves. And Gard has been in the motorcycle custom world most of his life in Los Angeles. And it is his life, and his story is incredible. Find out how him and Keanu met and started this company. This is definitely a type of company that's not going to be a giant moneymaker, but both these guys have pure passion for motorcycles. And it's just incredible to hear the story of Arch Motorcycles. They look amazing. They home runned it on the design. And oh my God, the fit and finish and the quality of these things. I saw them up close. It was unreal. And shit, I think I got to have one. Keep playing that lottery, get the winning ticket, go get my motorcycle, then get a Singer Porsche and then an Icon 4x4 Bronco. And I'll be all set with my high dollar machines. I'll be a Hollywood douchebag. As you guys, some of you out there would say, look at these Hollywood douchebags. You know, I never understood that. I've said it over and over. You hate on somebody because of what they're driving or their passions. It makes no sense to me. But I do know people like Brad Pitt and Keanu Reeves absolutely love motorcycles like myself. They're not walking around with like a wallet chain and a look like, yeah, man, I'm a biker. These guys ride every day, everywhere. And I can relate to that because I did almost over 5,000 shows stand-up on a motorcycle. And once you get on that bike, it's hard to get off. Something has to force you to get off. The guy's wife, because they just had a baby, a bad spill, or crazy shitty weather, like snowstorms. Whatever it is. Most people, it's in their blood for the rest of their lives. I love this episode, and I hope you guys too. Thank you for supporting the Grail. Enjoy it. Go to his Instagram, go to Arch Motorcycles, and check out this incredible company, what they're doing. All right, here we are, another episode of The Grail. Fantastic guest today. It's going to be motorcycles. Introduce yourself, my man.
Hi, Dean. I'm Gard Hollinger. I'm the co-founder of Arch Motorcycle.
Arch Motorcycles, which I first started hearing about, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, some press releases. And just recently, it looked like a lot of more press again on your new model out. But let's get a little bit of the history of the company and let people know, if they don't know, who your partner is and your background.
The history of the company. So we're just turning 10 years old. We founded the company in the end of 2011. We spent the first 3 years really just building infrastructure and engineering our first motorcycle model, which was a KR GT1. My history is a longtime motorcyclist. Started riding when I was 8 years old.
Yeah, I just saw your collection out there.
Taco mini bike.
Yeah, and then the RM125, 1977 metal tank, Roger DeCoster era, which blew my mind. Yeah. You showing me like these custom bikes. I'm like, these are great. And then I see that and I'm like, oh, fuck. Holy Grail up there. Right. Yeah, with the seat. Just RM125, the square seat.
Yeah, the good old days. And then, we talked a little bit about, but with the riding of the mini bikes as a kid, you got to learn how to fix them, right? And so I guess that's what started me wrenching. And then I ended up getting in the motorcycle business, as you sometimes make the mistake to do, turning your passion into your job. And so I've been in the motorcycle business on and off since 1981. Originally in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, up there? Where at?
Seattle area, primarily.
Yeah. And what were you doing? Were you selling motorcycles or a mechanic?
I had a small dealership and also a manufacturing company that made protective gear for motorcycles. So we made like disc brake covers and exhaust protectors and stuff like that.
And you were working for them, or did you?
I co-owned it. Yeah.
Right.
And then I moved back to Southern California in '94. Met my wife. That made me move back to California, and then got back in the motorcycle business in '97. I was a little rudderless, and answered an ad for it said come to work at the West Side's #1 Harley shop or something like that. And I was assuming it was Bartell's.
Right.
It ended up being this little custom shop in Culver City called Bad Bikes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Remember Schwarzkopf?
Oh, of course. I had the Indian dealership right next door to Eric.
Right.
So, yeah, I know Eric pretty well. So, anyway, I worked there for like maybe a year. I was sort of a gun for hire. Like, I'd spent so much of my life working for myself that when I took the job, I said, I'll take the job. And it was as a fabricator, but I just want to be my own boss. And you give me a job, I'll tell you how much I want. And we agree on it. When it's done, you pay me.
What year was that?
This was in like 95 or 96.
Oh, so way before the Discovery Channel Biker Build-Off and all that stuff. Yeah. Way before. Yeah. Like, what kind of stuff were they doing? Were they just...
They were doing stuff like that. This shop supposedly was somehow involved in building some of the bikes for the... what the hell was the Chopper movie with Mickey Rourke?
Oh, yeah, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
I know everybody claimed to have something to do with that, but, supposedly they built... who knows how many they built for the film, but
right, like the FXR modifications.
Yeah. So these guys just were like a repair shop, but also did a bunch of custom stuff, and they painted. They had a paint booth. So I was their fabricator, and it lasted like maybe a year, because every time that it came time to get paid for the job, it was always like trying to pry the money out of the dude's hands.
Oh yeah, the motorcycle business.
So I left. And I'd been working on 2 or 3 motorcycles for customers. And when I left, they were like, who's going to finish my motorcycle?
Yeah.
So they tracked me down. I ended up finishing the first one in the guy's garage. Then more people started coming. So I opened a little shop in Culver City with another customer from there who was, at the time, an LAPD motor cop.
Motor cop?
Yeah.
Those guys can ride, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I think when he retired, he was the longest active LA motor cop, like 32 years or something.
Wow. Isn't it crazy? You ever watch those YouTube where they're doing the competitions, the CHP guys, and the way they can turn those bikes?
Those big Harleys.
I don't know how they do. I rode all my life, and I don't know how they... It's all trail breaking, but they're masters at it around these cones.
Body position and trail
Dude,
breaking.
that's crazy, man. Those guys can ride.
They also know where all of the best fast food joints are.
Yeah. yeah.
Anyway, so that business grew into an opportunity to have the Indian dealership. So that, I think we opened, it was called Ziggy Harley.
This is Mach 2 of Indian, so Indian closes after World War II.
Correct, yeah.
And then they restart up in the...
Yeah, early, I guess late 70s, early 80s. They called it the Gilroy era.
Right. Oh, yeah, and they were made out in Gilroy. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah. There's a guy named Ray Sotelo who basically made a deal with the people that got the rights to turn his company, which was at the time called California Motorcycle Company, into Indian.
Right.
But it grew from there, quite a bit, and ended up in the end being owned by like some investment fund or something, which was probably the reason for the demise.
And they popped off pretty hard at first.
Yeah.
They came out with these models, and a couple years in or whatever, they all of a sudden have their own engine that was designed with S&S with those round barrels. We just saw one out in your garage there.
The Power Plus 100.
Yep. And they were going for it. They were trying to go for it. They had a dealer on Ventura Boulevard, I remember, in that big old corner complex. And they were coming out with that old school Indian look, which with the big fenders, which is what everybody loved about Indian back in the day. And they had the actual Indian logo on the fender that lit up. So they had the look. Head.
Yeah, I mean, they're making really good advancements. I mean, this is a totally different podcast to talk about what happened with Indian, because what a kooky history, right? But anyway, we had the Indian dealership, unfortunately, during that era and the demise of that era.
Yeah, I heard that was a nightmare. Like once they closed, people are coming at you like, my bike needs to be repaired.
Yeah, I mean, basically everybody, all the customers were sort of left out in the cold. There was a little bit of, I would say like for 6 months, a bit of a panic for, people wanting to grab whatever they could grab and not knowing what the future was going to be of it, right? And then sadly, it just sort of went dormant for a few years, and then a guy out of South Carolina, a guy named Stephen Julius, I think, bought it, and then they called that the King Mountain era.
Yeah.
And then, of course, everybody knows Polaris acquired it, and they've done an amazing job to
Oh my God, yeah.
really make a great product, you know.
I mean, they went for it so hard that they dropped their brand.
Yeah, Victory.
They just got rid of Victory, which was crazy to think, because Victory, you know, I mean, there were guys riding, you know, Victory,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, in like a year, they're like, we're just going to get rid of Victory and go Indian. And
Yeah.
they've really
There's another podcast for you.
Yeah.
You talk to some Victory dealers.
Yeah, right.
Because they didn't all just become Indian dealers. You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, and then during the Indian dealership days, I wanted to keep the custom side of it alive, so I started what I called chop rods. And then that continued after we closed the dealership. And then one day a friend of mine said, hey, Keanu Reeves wants to have some work done to his motorcycle. He wants to have a sissy bar built. Do you want to build a sissy bar for Keanu?
On his West Coast?
No, it was actually on a 05 Dyna that he had.
Oh, wow. 05 Dyna.
Yeah.
And Keanu, if people don't know, this guy is a massive motorcycle head, and a guy that I would not see other than riding by, or you just missed him. He was just here, but he was way into motorcycles, still is, just like Brad Pitt. Multiple different types of bikes, West Coast choppers, Dynas, whatever. He loves to ride, and he is a rider.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's only owned a few cars in his life, you know. So avid motorcyclist is as a main mode of transportation. And he's not really a collector, but he's owned a lot of different motorcycles. I think, you know, he said once he used to, when he'd go on location someplace, he'd just find a local shop, see what they had, buy whatever was interesting there, ride it while they were filming, and then sell it when he was done. He'd sell it back to the shop. So I think that process, he experienced a lot of different types of motorcycles. You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, this friend, you know, knew him and asked if I was interested in building a sissy bar. I said, well, not really.
Yeah.
And what I meant by that was I learned by that time that, you know, and we talked about this a little bit before, I could build, you know, the most amazing sissy bar, and it could be the world's most expensive sissy bar, and I'd still only make $1.60 an hour.
Yeah.
So he said, well, you know, Keanu's interested in coming to the shop. Would you show him the shop? So I was like, sure. So I had the same conversation with him when he came about the sissy bar, and he's like, well, why not? And I said, well, it's not really what I do. So he said, well, what do you do? I said, well, come in the shop and see. So he saw some of the bikes I was building. So then the conversation turned from a sissy bar to, well, could we do something else with my bike? I have this 05 Dyna. I've been unemployed for a while, and I basically customized it with a catalog, and I think I fucked it up.
Yeah. He's just throwing Harley parts on it and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right. And is this, what year is this?
This was in 2007.
So when it comes in, is it the type of Sam Crow high risers and that kind of thing?
Bit. This was maybe a little pre, you know, Sons of Anarchy. So although that style was, you know, I guess we'd call that maybe club style at the time.
Yeah, I would call it Frisco because,
okay,
you know, growing up in San Fran,
Yeah.
they would just get night train risers. At the time, it was only 6 inches,
Yeah, right.
but it seemed huge.
Yeah.
6-inch risers on your FXR and mid controls and you know, some shocks that made it higher. And so you could go up over curbs and everything.
Yeah.
And they were the guys that were riding like that. Nobody else that I ever saw.
Right.
You know, but yeah, exactly club style.
So it was kind of that style, yeah. I think it had like pullback T-bars on it, but again, he'd like, you know, I think he'd gone to Bartell's or something, and you know, just gone through the catalog with the parts guy and said, okay, that.
Yeah.
So that began a process that was 4 or 5 years long, and it ended up yielding the bike that I showed you out there, which looked nothing like what he originally asked for.
Unreal. I mean, you showed it to me out there, and it's basically the prototype for Arch.
Yeah.
And it's not even a Dyna. I couldn't even,
Yeah.
and I'm a motorcycle guy, and I'm like, I don't see a Dyna there at all except for the engine.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, I think originally he was like, I want something that I can ride around town, but I could also like go to San Francisco on. I could like put somebody on the back and go to San Francisco. and then you see what it turned
It's
into.
definitely. I would ride that out to Malibu and back.
Surprisingly, you could ride it pretty far, but there's no bags.
Yeah, there's no bag,
passenger seat.
yeah.
Anyway,
No shield.
No, exactly. But it was a really unique motorcycle to ride. So, I've been riding since I was 8, and I've ridden, just about every kind of motorcycle. He's been riding since his early 20s, has ridden just about every kind of motorcycle. And we both agreed that it was a unique motorcycle to ride, for this idea of an American V-twin that still had those characteristics that you think of with an American V-twin, but the thing handled, and it had this amazing suspension. And
Were you guys at the time, like, were you doing some drawings and going, what if we do this kind of backbone? And what if we did, I mean, like, because it's so far from anything.
Yeah.
I mean, are you guys just sitting down talking and going like, how about this?
Yeah, it was an interesting process. And the reason it took so long is that, he'd go away and work. And meanwhile, I'm like, sort of pushing the direction of it. And then when he'd come into town, we'd meet. And then each of these times we'd meet, it'd be a different conversation. So it started out, I want sort of like a 70s club style bike that I could ride to San Francisco. And then I'm like, okay, look, I don't know if I can do that with an '05 Dyna.
Yeah.
But let me see what I can do. And I'd do some drawings, and he'd come back and I'd show him. And then I'd explain why, look, we're never going to get exactly the look of a 70s club bike because those guys are riding rigids with like a king and queen seat. And then he'd be like, well, how did they do that? And I go, well, they were tough as shit, and so were their old ladies.
Yeah. There's no shocks on this, so the seat sits on the frame, and it has a total different look.
Yeah.
And the king and queen seat, Aki makes one now for Dynas. It's so fantastic.
Yeah.
What a design that is,
That's brilliant, right?
It's great.
With the knees up in the air.
Yeah, it's just cool.
So anyway, it just would morph each time, and he would give up something a little bit each time, because like he would say like, I think I'm asking you to do something that doesn't work. And then he'd say, go ahead and do blah, blah, blah. And then he'd come back. And so it really went, it went to the point where finally he was like, okay, fuck it. This bike's just for me to ride. And that's how we ended up with that motorcycle.
Yeah, the design is the backbone and everything. It's a little like Alien, the movie. It's got this crazy
kind of a Geiger-y thing.
Yeah, total Geiger,
Yeah, I don't know if it was intended to do that, but I mean, I think if you look at the style of some of the stuff I'd built at Chop Rods, it's always sort of utilitarian and bare, and they typically weren't big tire bikes. I mean, that original bike had a 210 on, and that was probably I built one other fat tire bike just because we had parts laying around I had to get rid of. But typically I was building skinny tire, more like bobber. So this was kind of an evolution of that, and it was also the first bike I'd really built using CAD, using 3D stuff. Through that process, I would say a couple or 3 years into that process, when we'd meet and we were looking at these 3D models, he started to say things like, there's something about this that looks familiar to me, and is this something we could make more of and share with the world? And I just would always say, why don't I finish this one and we see if there's, Eventually, when it was done and we agreed that it was interesting to ride, when he brought it up again, I was like, okay, well, let's talk about it. And of course, I felt like I needed to do my duty and try really hard to talk him out of it.
Yeah.
And tell him all the reasons it was a horrible idea.
Yeah.
And he persisted and prevailed, and eventually we would meet, and I would have like a legal pad with all these questions for him. I really tortured the guy.
In the meantime, while you're doing that, are you just doing motorcycle fabrication and repair on your side, on the side?
Very little repair. Mostly, I had a small parts line that I sold, and I was the U.S. distributor for ISR brake parts, and then I would build a couple one-off customs a year, and pretty much a one-man shop. I mean, I'd had the dealership with a bunch of employees, and I was sort of happy to be like back in the garage doing my own thing.
Right.
So there, that was part of my decision too. Like I knew that for me, I wasn't interested in, sadly, much to the chagrin of my wife, I've never been motivated by money. So it's always been like, am I interested in what I'm doing? And do I feel like it's satisfying whatever creative thing I want to do? And am I passionate about it, And so part of the decision was, am I going to commit to this thing that if I'm going to partner with this person who I clearly see is passionate about and committed to it, then I'm in it for the long haul, you know? And yeah, so, and also I just wanted him to understand, because I'd been in the business a long time and it's a tough business. I want him to understand, like, you know, this ain't going to be easy. It ain't going to be cheap. It ain't going to be quick. And in the end, after I asked him all these questions that I'd cross off on my legal pad, I was like, okay, regardless of everything else that I've asked you, what's the one reason we should do this? And he said, we're going to die. And I got what he was saying was,
that's genius.
This is a chance for us to do something that we care about, and I'm committed. And so then I said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And it's been 10 years. And it's been a hell of a lot of work, and I think we've accomplished I think we've done something that's nearly impossible to do in this day and age, you know, start a motorcycle company. And even though we're small, we try to be a real production motorcycle company that just has a unique twist that we personalize each motorcycle.
Yeah, we were talking about that era of the TV motorcycle craze, of the chopper build-off and all that, biker build-off. And, you know, all these companies that just seem to kind of open up overnight. Big Dog, Swift.
American Iron.
American Iron. Yeah. All these guys were building these 300 rear tire choppers, and they were just overnight. There was these companies. Yeah. And now they're all gone. Yeah. And I think one of the main reasons they were all gone, where they were, but of course, the chopper fad kind of died off, but also they were what I call the unridables. They just, you couldn't, they didn't handle. They were big. People didn't understand geometry. Yeah. They also didn't have an eye for design. They were just ripping off like a standard chopper style, but they didn't know, you know, why won't this thing turn, and why does it get speed wobbles, and you know, why does shit fall off of it?
I mean, I think a lot of that also was, you know, these weren't necessarily motorcycle purists, right? These were businessmen who were enthusiasts who thought they saw an opportunity, didn't understand how difficult the business was.
And they also weren't purist riders, the people that were buying them. They were just putting them in their garage next to their boat. Yeah. People show up and they go, dude, look at my chopper.
It's another thing I have with my, you know, 120% refi that I got on my house.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, you know, most of these companies were building these things out of, you know, product that was sort of free floating in the market. There wasn't a lot of unique parts they were having made, right?
Yeah, they were catalog bikes, Daytech frames, RevTech engines, and just bolt-on shit.
And if we're selling a $19,000 at retail chopper, what do we got to build it for?
Yeah.
You know? So, and then, you know, they got a dealer network and the whole thing. So, but an interesting time. I think it was a nice injection to the industry, you know. I mean,
oh God, yeah. Oh, big time, man. That Discovery Channel put a blast into the motorcycle. Yeah. That Sons of Anarchy, and just the whole thing of I would say also kind of hipster biker, you know. Yeah. And then stuff like you know, Sturgis got red hot again all of a sudden. It was like really a wild time.
Yeah, it's interesting because both of us, I think, being long-time enthusiasts, like to see the cycles. Like in the 70s, everybody had a motorcycle in their garage. That was like part of what the family did as recreation. Yeah. And then that kind of went away again until, you know, the early 2000s or late 90s or whatever. And then, of course, ended again in the late 2007 or 8 in the housing crisis. But anyway, it was, you know, it seemed like to take this idea for a different kind of American motorcycle, and also a production motorcycle that is sort of based on the concept of creating something unique for each customer and not something for everybody. You know, like we knew it was going to be expensive because you can't do that. You know, look, we get with the internet and the beauty of everybody being able to share their opinion.
Yeah, armchair warriors.
We hear all the time, you know, why can't you build an arch that we can all afford?
Yeah.
Why can't you build a Rolls Royce that everyone can afford? Or
if it was one everybody could afford, nobody would want it.
And you can't really make something special that, you know, for everybody necessarily, right? So
yeah, it's I saw the the progression of your designs, and the newest one that I just saw when I walked in is fantastic.
The 1S.
Yeah. And whoever's getting that next week is going to be fucking in heaven. But what we're really talking about is we're talking about an equivalent to Icon 4x4 or Rod Emery's Outlaw Porsche or Singer Porsche. We're talking about stuff that is way beyond just a guy making a motorcycle in a shop that's custom.
Yeah.
And it was the small things that you showed me that immediately made it radical to me. Like when you buy one, you get this aluminum box,
right,
and it has a custom little kit with a couple tools you're going to need to work on it. And then a book with photos of the building process and your bike, and then a spare key. That kind of stuff is when you think about a company that has gone the extra mile. When people go like, what? How much are those? No fucking way. I go, you don't even understand. Like like you said, the box alone's like $2,000. You know,
Yeah.
and what people don't understand is that's the kind of vision that makes me want to get something like this, because it's like, oh, they go the extra mile. This is all a thing. It's not just here's your bike, see ya.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think you're like this, so you can appreciate. I think that there's always been a subset of people who appreciate something that's quality, something that, a lot of time and thought has gone into. And the world obviously has gone through cycles where it's become more and more like people just want mass-produced things that, come from the cheapest place they can get.
Yeah.
But I think there's a new appreciation, especially as the world gets more complex, for people, to appreciate those kind of things that a lot of like passion and thought and quality and work has gone into. And it's not cheap or easy to do it,
Well, that's what this show's all about.
Yeah, right.
Because, people are like, fuck that guy and his $120,000 motorcycle, and then they start to hear the show and they go, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
It takes like a year to build it. It's built by hand by one dude out there. Each guy that gets a motorcycle, it's built by, it's not a team or whatever. It's an individual, which now in my nerdy world goes back to like Fender back in the
Sure.
day when they signed the neck pocket.
Yeah, each
and they
guy
s-
that built it.
Yeah, and the wiring control. Now in my mind, I'm like, I wonder who the best guy at Archer is. I want that guy. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
right.
this is a Timmy, and
Yeah.
it's better. You know?
Well, we only got a couple right now, so
Yeah. But you get into
Yeah.
that. Like,
Yeah.
well, which guy's better? But
it's funny.
it's it's an amazing design, this new bike, and of course coming off of the FXR world and the Harley Dyna world, which I grew up on and rode all my life, and understand the the nucleus of what you're doing out there, but making it even more handleable. And now, once we got into kind of Ducati Diavos, which you said was funny because no one had seen your bike,
Yeah.
and then Diavo came out, and you're like, damn, that's
The
pretty
collective consciousness.
Yeah, right. But it is a platform with an S&S engine, which is, I think, one of the greatest engines ever made.
They build a really great, reliable engine, yeah.
Yeah, and then everything else is just ground up new. I mean, you got like, I just saw one out there that had a carbon fiber frame and
right.
rims and swing arm. It's
The
like,
Method 143.
that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, even the engine, the heart of the engine comes from S&S, but then we're building the rest of the drivetrain, so the oiling system and the transmission case, and what completes the whole drivetrain. So, we're a true little motorcycle factory, and we continue to develop, and you'll see a next generation probably in 2 or 3 years, and hopefully we'll have our own power plant in it as well. Still, hopefully, an American air-cooled V-twin, but pretty cool. And more advancements, And I think the idea of, I think we've seen some examples of American motorcycles that are on sort of both ends of where we are, right? Like a Buell is an American V-twin sport bike, and we're not quite that. and Harley and Indian are sort of street cruisers. So we're somewhere in between, and I guess some of those companies are now coming out with product like that too, right? Like Indian with the the FTR.
Yep.
And Harley with some of their new power plant and some of their like the new Sportster and stuff. So I think we decided to do something that's working out, and again the collective conscience is kicking.
Yeah. What was the run me through? So he comes on board, you two start. Now what was the idea? I guess we're going to build a website, get a shop, and put a bike up and get some orders.
Yeah, I don't think we had a website for several years in, but we found a location and had to build the infrastructure of the business and build equipment, and we started re-engineering that motorcycle that I had built for him. We had CAD data as a baseline, but it was built around the Harley Dyna, so we had to sort of re-engineer everything. We spent about 3 years re-engineering that first model, which is called we call the KRGT1. And in the end, we used to joke the only thing we didn't change was the size of the front tire. But the idea was always that we would have 3 models eventually, always be low volume. Hopefully we would get to around 100 motorcycles a year across all 3, but try to keep it limited to that. I would never say never, but our ambitions aren't to make hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands of motorcycles. It's really to keep it small and unique and boutique, right? And so we finally have the 1S, which took us another, I guess, we introduced it in 2017. The idea for the 1S came around probably by 2015, and I had some sort of side profile drawings. And in 2017, we committed to do it. Out of that came the Method 143. And the 1S is now in production, and hopefully the Method will be being industrialized later this year, and we'll be building some by early next year.
Now, when you build the first, let's say, 1S, I mean, you don't know until you ride the first one, because it's a frame you build, it's a swing arm you build, and the geometry and stuff. So do you build the first one, and is it a home run out of the gate, or you're like, God, we got to tweak this at speed wobbles or anything like that?
I mean, listen, there's a massive amount of motorcycle engineering, history to use as a baseline, right?
Of course.
So you'd be silly not to do that. But you're right. You never really know for sure if it's going to work till I'm usually the initial test pilot, right? I'm the Chuck Yeager, if you will. And so I'm going to do my homework to make sure that it's as close as I think it needs to be. But we're always tweaking a little bit, right? We've never had problems like, speed wobble and that kind of stuff. But, I tend to be maniacally picky. And so nothing's ever good enough. And, you have to try to know when good enough is good enough. But we're always incrementally improving things if we can, whether it's just like, I think the rear shock could work a little better. I think we could fix this in the brakes or, whatever it is. But cross fingers, knock on wood. I'll just pretend to knock on wood. Every time, we've been close enough that it's just little tweaks. We probably wouldn't have to do anything if we didn't want to, but you never know. As I've been doing this a long time.
Oh yeah.
I never am cocky about, this F.
Well, I told you my Confederate nightmare,
Yeah.
I owned it for 3 months. The whole thing fucking fell apart.
Yeah.
And then when I called them, they were just like, oh, yeah, obviously they weren't used to people writing their product. And when they get somebody that does write it and the whole thing falls apart, they just go running. Like, oh, yeah, okay, man, so we'll talk to you soon, that is a point of people going, well, let's throw this giant motor into this piece of rigid mounted steel and hope everything stays on and doesn't wobble and performs in canyons or whatever, You're riding a motorcycle, and if it falls apart, you're on it.
Yeah, you don't have the comfort of, 4 wheels to coast to a stop.
Yeah.
But look, I'm going to let you be the critic of other brands.
Oh yeah.
But I just know from our perspective, we sort of look at everything in a very focused way, right? Like we know what we want, and we don't look. we hope that we have something that has some curb appeal. That's important because people have to want to like your product visually, but we also want it to work, right? So that's always a huge focus. We wouldn't build something that was just for aesthetic, right? It's a rider's motorcycle. We have customers that have, tens of thousands of miles on their motorcycles, and that's what we want to have happen.
That's great. Now, when you first start getting the word out there, how many orders do you get out of the box?
Not many.
And how much were they when they first started? Like 60, 70?
78 grand, I think, the first, 75 or 78, the first KR GT1s.
And the phone wasn't ringing.
No, I mean, we had some people that we had interest and we had orders, but it wasn't like, we couldn't keep up. And it had to build. And there was definitely, and listen, I understand. I knew out of the gate one of the challenges would be, and Keanu and I talked about this, was that, all of the examples that I had of celebrity involvement in motorcycle companies were not swell.
Yeah, right.
And so I knew Keanu was passionate, and I knew that this wasn't just folly for him or some sort of a vanity project, right? But I also knew that we were going to have to prove ourselves over time. And, people have learned what a passionate motorcyclist he is. He's authentic, right? And they also know, like, he's not here building motorcycles.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Certainly he's very involved in the company. He's co-owner of the company, and he's committed to it. But, he's not. He has a day job.
Yeah.
So yeah. We're committed to building motorcycles you can ride. We want them to be for motorcycle riders and also enthusiasts, right?
How do you come up with the name?
Oh, that's a kooky one. Keanu and I always have fun with names. So when we started the company, we were doing the name game, and we had lists of hundreds of names. And I think both of us tended to like names that were more ethnic, if you will. So maybe something Italian or Spanish or maybe even Asian, or but we're an American motorcycle brand, so the ones we would like, we'd be like, we can't use that. And then we'd get together and we'd go over these lists, and we were to the point where we couldn't decide. We had maybe 10 left on the list but didn't love any of them. In one of these meetings, Keanu came, and about 30 minutes into us just catching up, he said, I did have one other idea for a name. And I was like, okay, what is it? And I had always said the name should tell a story. There should be some story behind the name. So he said the name, Arch Motorcycle. And I thought, okay, well, that doesn't suck, but why? And he started to tell a story about what an arch is, right? So an arch is sort of this antiquitous, it's been around forever, but you don't necessarily think of it as being an antique. Provides structure and strength. It provides connection. So you could use an example of a bridge or a tunnel. And then the idea of connection, which could be the motorcycle and the customer and Arch as a company, our partnership. And that it can also create passage like a tunnel and space for creativity to live in. And I just thought, that's the perfect name.
The arch on your foot.
So that became the name. So it had nothing to do with, with my name, his name. I mean, he wanted to call it the Hollinger at one point, and I said, no way, let's call it the Reeves. No way.
Oh, yeah.
So we argued about
let's use
not
your name.
using. So yeah, that was it. I loved the idea of what an arch is. I liked that it was a nice compact thing graphically. And that became it from that second. The second I heard it, he was like, "Are you sure?"
Yeah. Do you ride one every day?
I ride one as many days as I can.
Yeah, because when I was coming in, you were riding one, a customer's bike.
Well, again, we have a lot of test riders, but the main ones are Keanu and myself. I mean, he logs, ton of miles. I mean, I'm sure collectively between what we do as a company and what our customers have done, well over 300,000 miles on Arch motorcycles, and we've only built like maybe 80 of them so far. Wow. So, they're pretty reliable and they've been well tested. So yeah, I try to ride one every day. I'm like you. I know that you've been off a motorcycle for a little while.
Yep.
it makes me crazy to get in a car in LA.
Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal. And now when I'm in a car for a long time, I'm like, man, how the fuck did I ride to Bakersfield when it was like 32 and snowing over the Grapevine to go do 10 minutes of comedy, you know?
But what fond memories.
Yeah. It
Feels good on the old bones.
It's wild. It's wild to think about when you live on a motorcycle and then you finally aren't on one for a while. For a while, you're in your car and you're trying to split lanes in your mind. You're looking down like, God, what the fuck's going on up there?
I wish I could just ram this thing between these two cars.
Just move, man. I mean, me seeing the one you rode in on today was definitely my favorite bike I saw out in the garage. It's just the aesthetics and design. And you and I, talking about architecture, and you lived in a Lautner.
Yeah.
And, design is just kind of becomes part of your life and everything. And people don't even realize how significant it is to a Jordan 1 sneaker, to a motorcycle, to architecture of a cool house. Everything that has people that love something, it's usually comes down to design. And when you came in on this bike today, I was like, wow, that thing is fucking beautiful. It's just
kind
finesse.
Of you to say.
You know what it reminds me of is the great, the positioning of it is like the Jeff Decker, the flying man.
Sure.
There's no one on it, but it looks like a kind of a guy was flying, it's kind of, and then it also has kind of that old boat tail vibe.
So a lot of that influence, I think, in both the 1S and the Method 143, a little bit of the idea of what say an ocean liner that's unladen looks like.
Yeah.
And then also some aircraft influence and stuff like that. And, trying not to be too on the nose, but some influence from that stuff, which is not totally normal in the motorcycle world. I mean, you see some cues of it with air intakes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's nice that you notice that.
Oh man. I mean, remember the boat tail? I mean, I think that's one of the coolest Harleys ever made.
Right.
You just see it and you go, that's fucking cool as shit, Now, what is I talked to you about it. The engines are front rubber mounted, but the back is not. So,
so the rear mounts we basically created a tapered bearing pack in the back that rotates around an axle. So the same pivot as a swing arm, and so you still have some of the benefits of the rubber mount to absorb vibration, but you have great rigidity. You don't have this situation where the chassis is moving sort of on its own, separate from the engine.
Now the frame is a single down tube.
Yeah, single down tube.
Super thick though, like 3 inches or something.
Yeah, I think it's 2 inch.
Yeah, it's like a thick down tube,
and it splits. It has like a yoke and it splits into a dual cradle.
Any vibration out on the road, or is it like really smooth?
A little bit,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I think it's a pleasant vibration.
Right.
It's not super smooth because it's sort of purposeful.
Yeah.
And then it has that lope and an idle that you'd find on a Dyna or an FXR or something like that.
And then it's got ABS and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, the 1S we don't have active ABS in the 1S now, but we're working on it. And the KR GT1 has had ABS since, I don't know, for the last 3 or 4 years, something like that.
Man, ABS is like a must for me because I don't care who you are. You can ride all your life. A guy pulls in front of you, you just grab too much brake.
Yeah.
Because it's just a panic. Like, it's not a panic. It's just like
an instinct.
Reflex.
Yeah. I mean, the idea is that you don't know it's there until you need it, right?
Yeah,
If it works that way, it's brilliant,
Now, how does it work? Somebody wants to get a bike. Anybody financing?
We don't offer financing, sadly. I mean, I think we're small enough that no finance company's interested in talking to us, really. Maybe some customers have done some financing on their own. I mean, obviously, all of our customers, to some degree, are financially secure,
right?
because it's not a cheap motorcycle. I can't afford one.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I get to ride one without, I'm
That's
paying
the
in
best.
blood and sweat.
Yeah, well, that's the best anyway.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I don't have to pay for it. I just ride it daily.
It's like having a friend with a boat or an airplane.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when you want to order one, though, so you call up and you say, hey, I want to order an arch. I want this model. Do they come in? Is it kind of like Singer where they go over the color combos, or is it like West Coast where you go, well, we make it and you get what you get?
Yeah, so I guess this is the typical or ideal scenario. Customer contacts us, decides they want to buy a motorcycle. They make a deposit, and then we have a creative meeting with them. They can do that here in person at the shop, or they can do it remotely via video or whatever. And usually we'll give them a little homework ahead of that meeting, and I'll ask them to think about providing us some visual examples of things they like, colors that they like, and also a list of colors they hate. And I tell them, don't feel like you just have to send us pictures of cars or boats or motorcycles. Like, I look everywhere for inspiration, probably like you, architecture, sometimes even cultures and, whatever, nature. So if there's anything that sort of like inspires you visually, send us that or bring it with you. And then we'll sit down with originally it was basically me. Now fortunately we have some other designers here who are much more skilled with digital graphics. And also creative, so they'll sometimes bring great ideas that I wouldn't think of or that the customer wouldn't think of. So we'll have that conversation with the customer, and then we'll also show them some examples of finishes that are sort of standard finishes for components on the motorcycle and talk about what they prefer. And then they go away, and about a week or so later, we send them a digital deck that'll have examples that are really close to what they asked for, and then some stuff that maybe we went a little too far with, just to see if we can get them to go outside of what they would normally do, right? And then we go back and forth with them, tweaking stuff till they're happy. They sign off on it, and we start the process of building their motorcycle. We used to say 90 days, but with the new normal that the pandemic's created, we obviously have some supply chain issues just like the rest of the world. So sometimes it's taking a little bit longer, but it's still our goal to get it done as quick as we can. And all the parts go out.
90 days pre-pandemic, huh?
Yeah.
Think about those other guys back in the day. There was like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Singer's got people waiting 4 years now.
Fuck.
Which is great. If people wait that long and they have that many orders, that's fantastic. I always felt like 90 days was just enough time to build some anticipation, but not too long that you'd be like, I'm over that thing.
Yeah.
So that was always the goal. And we can actually, once we get all the parts back from whatever the custom processes are, whether it's paint or ano or whatever it is, we can assemble and test the bike in like 10 days.
Wow.
So, we've really gotten the way we assemble them and the engineering of the motorcycle down to a bit of a science for us, I'm sure the big motorcycle companies would laugh when they can build a motorcycle in a couple hours on an assembly line.
Oh, yeah, right. Harley is just coming down that fucking chain. It's just like, they're pumping out 1 million bikes a year. Yeah. It's wild. I walked around out there. You got some employees here, man. That's always the scariest thing, looking at people, but you got a lot. How many employees you got?
I think we have 12 or 13, and then we have some outside vendors that come here and work on site too. And I don't count myself because, I'm the janitor and the guy that signs the checks. And
yeah.
So it's a bit of an enterprise.
Yeah.
It's like a small family.
Yeah, right. I mean, were you getting guys that were coming at you like, hey, I'm a fabricator, I want to work here, or like, or I worked at Harley, I was a mechanic, or BMW?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've built the team over time, which is kind of nice, and I think we've built an environment and an opportunity for to work at a place that's sort of a rare opportunity, and so I think we've built like a really nice team of guys, and they've come at different times, right? We have a fabricator who actually worked at West Coast years ago, who has been here like 8 years. We had our original machinist and sort of my right-hand man was here from day one, who left and started his own business in Colorado, but still does some consulting stuff and some work for us. So he was here like 9 years. So yeah, we just, we've found guys along the way that appreciate what we're doing, and it's a nice team and a nice environment to work in. And I mean, we're always looking for, for somebody new that comes along, but we're not like hard on the hunt all the time, right?
I was checking out the Rivians over the weekend.
Ah, yeah.
And it reminds me of anybody trying to build something from the ground up. A motorcycle, a new company, or a electric car company. Tesla did it, but there's a lot of people that have come and gone.
Yeah.
And, Fisker, they're back again for round 2. But it is interesting to think about, like you and I talked about out there, this is a brutal business. And I'm always like, I look around at the warehouse here, I see all the bikes, and I'm like, man, this is, you got to sell some bikes to pay for,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's scary.
That's the goal. That's the goal. For
yeah,
sure.
totally.
But, the good thing is that, there was an understanding from the beginning and a commitment from the beginning that, this was going to take some investment, not just in dollars, but in time, right? Like, you can't build a brand overnight.
Yeah.
And you have to prove your authenticity and you have to prove your longevity, right? So it's been a lot of work, but it feels like a real honor and opportunity to have in this day and age, to have the chance to do something like this. So I always remember that when all the bad shit's happening.
Yeah.
I always remember that, it's a rare opportunity.
Well, it's just cool to have people that take a chance, because it's like, we need cool stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like, oh God, are we all going to be in a Prius? I mean, who knows? It's just
not
like
that there's anything wrong with the Prius.
No, not at all. But I'm just saying, after a while, you just kind of turn into robots.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, like I said, it comes down to people that have passion, and then other people that have passion. They meet each other like, God, I love this motorcycle. I love what you did here. I got to have one somehow.
Yeah. And appreciation for it. I mean, it's great. We talked about architecture. Imagine if we didn't have any Frank Lloyd Wrights or...
Well, look what happened when they were just building those track homes, and America just turned into that.
I mean, those guys could have made a ton of money just building tract homes, right?
Totally. And
I'll design this one, and then I'll move the bathroom here, and then I'll just turn it 180 degrees here.
They're all the same. They're just mirrored images.
Fit them together like a puzzle.
Yeah. It's a wild world out there, man. I'm glad I got to come down here and see all the stuff, and the bikes are just fantastic.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah, really good. That one, when you were, I just happened to catch you right when I got off the freeway, and I was behind you, and I didn't even know it was you, but I knew the bike, so I go, I'm just following this guy because I know he's going to the shop. It was total perfect timing.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, look at that thing. And then I was just like, wow, that thing's cool, man. I just kept staring at it. I was like, then I was speeding up to catch you, and I was like, fuck, I hope I don't hit the guy, but it was, the bike is just, as soon as I saw that one in my mind, I go, oh, if I got one, I would immediately go the Ford Golf GT paint scheme.
Oh, yeah.
That would be mine.
Yeah.
It'd be the blues and the oranges, and that would, because it kind of felt like...
that's a good paint scheme.
That's what it felt like to me.
We've pitched some of those, but they didn't, the customer didn't pick up.
Oh,
on
I'd go that.
It works on it for sure.
Oh, yeah. You could just tell, Well, thanks, man.
Hey, we got to talk about the shared love of Frenchies.
Oh, yeah. I got Gertie here, French Bulldog. Now, you had 4.
Yeah, we have 2 right now, but, I mean, they're the best dogs. We shouldn't be saying that because there's so many of them out there already. I'm shocked at this kooky shit that's happening where people are getting held up for them.
Oh man, it's a nightmare.
Right?
Like somebody steals your dog.
You have to take your
I'd rather you
gat with
steal
you
the
to walk your
motorcycle,
dog, right? Yeah,
you
have to take your pistol with you to walk your dog.
It's crazy, man. I was talking about, I do a bit about it right now.
Are you? Okay.
I had to get fucking pepper spray.
Yeah.
And pepper spray, you don't even know if it works or not until it's time to use it.
Yeah,
For all
right.
you know, some guy bottling up water in his garage, and then the guy's like, "Give me your dog," and you spray him, and he's like, "What are you cleaning my glasses?" Oh, Gertie.
They're the best, though.
They are, man, and
Such an awesome temperament.
I bring this dog everywhere with me,
That's
and I
great.
just can't imagine. I'm that dude now. Here
Yeah.
comes Dean and his dog.
That's good. I don't trust anybody that doesn't like dogs.
Well, hopefully one day I'll ride one of these. Check it out.
I'll have to take you for a ride.
Yeah, I'd
for
love
sure.
to ride one for, out to Malibu or something.
Yeah, that's where you got to do it.
Yeah.
We've taken people on rides here, and it's like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't really.
This is just like, industrial
Yeah,
area.
you got
But
to get it in some.
I'd love to
up
get on one.
Mulholland.
Check
Yeah,
it out.
for sure. We'll do that.
You ever thought of doing an electric bike?
That topic always comes up. I've been following the electric thing obviously for
Yeah.
years. I actually bought one of the early sort of performance electric motorcycles, a company called Mission,
Whoa.
and they never got all the way launched. But I made a deposit on one. They were only going to build like 75 of them. Thing was incredible. So I watch it. I think for us, what makes sense is for us to follow the tech. I have my own opinions about what's going to help move it forward. And it's a much longer conversation, but we're watching it, and someday we may not have a choice.
Right.
We still love the ICE engine, the internal combustion.
Yeah.
Even though that's maybe not a fashionable thing to like these days. For me, the conversation about electric always goes to, what's really behind it. I feel like there's a bit more of a marketing and a political sort of driver behind it at the moment, because where the hell does electricity come from now?
Yeah.
And I'm a proponent for we got to protect the planet we live on. So, I'm not blind to that, but we're hoping that, we've been working on our own engine for a while, and it'll be a while before it's ready to be in product. But I think it'll be the next step for our product, and we keep an eye on the electric thing. And when it gets to a point where we think it's applicable to our brand and the product we make, then yeah. I don't know what you think about it, but electric motorcycles, it seems like right now, does anybody want to buy an $80,000 to $100,000 electric motorcycle that can maybe go 100 miles?
Yeah, I know that's the problem is the miles. I really like the KTM electric dirt bike.
Yeah.
If I lived out in like Todos Santos and I was just in my own world and in like a beach house and just burning around the desert, you got no maintenance, no oil changes, no rings or anything. And I really like that. And
I think it works for that kind of product.
Right.
And it's going to be a few more years where it's working really well for that kind of product, So I totally agree with you on that front. Or even if you're using it as a commuter, 30 miles each direction.
Like the Harley one.
Yeah.
I rode it. I rode it back when it was the secret. It was a secret.
Yeah,
They're like,
right.
hey, show up here and ride this and let us know what you thought. And I loved it. It was like Tron, just zzz.
Yeah.
But it would definitely be a second or third bike
Right.
in my bike world. I always got to have like a BMW GS, then some kind of Ducati, and then this electric bike,
Yeah.
and then an FXR. Those are like that's the stable,
Yeah, there you go.
And but I do like electric bikes. That's scary that they don't make any noise.
Yeah.
And in this world of people just smoking weed while they're driving all day, I'm like,
They're doing everything but driving their 3,000-pound vehicle.
Yeah, I saw a guy he just had his iPad on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
He's not even looking at the road at all.
It's amazing, isn't
I'm
it?
like, and then people are just smoking weed and their stereos are crazy loud. Now the stereos are so loud, so it's like you got to have some kind of sound or whatever. It's interesting
I
because
find myself in a car getting aggro with nothing moving.
Yeah.
I find myself on a motorcycle getting aggro that people are trying to kill me.
Yeah.
And they're not trying to kill me because it's purposeful. They're trying to kill me because they're not paying attention to the fact that they're in control or supposed to be in control of this 3,000-pound vehicle, right?
Sometimes they're trying to kill you on purpose too.
Well,
they don't
true.
even realize you're on like, hey, that's the kind. Like they'll just look at you and they'll go, "I'm coming over. I don't give a fuck." And you're like, "Hey, you just looked right at me. I saw you."
It's kooky.
They're like, "I don't give a fuck about you."
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yep.
You know, it really is wild out there. But you know, I love motorcycles more than anything. Motorcycles and Porsche 911s, those are just, you know, they both, when I hear them, my ears are so tuned. When I'm walking my dog, I hear, whoa, I go, oh, that's a 911.
Yeah.
I just hear air cooled. Or I hear a motorcycle. I look, I don't even care what bike it is. I look every time.
Right.
It's wild. Well, thanks, man. Tell everybody you got an Instagram, right?
Yeah, I think it's just at Arch Motorcycle.
Cool. And the website?
I'm really dumb about social media. Website is archmotorcyclenoS.com.
Oh, and by the way, one of the bikes was like on a video game, right?
Yeah, so Cyberpunk 2077 did a version of the Method 143, and it's in their game. So I guess it's
and that
you
bike's
can own an Arch
$250,000?
motorcycle. Well, the actual Method, the one we produce, is $250,000. I think the one is included in the game, or I don't know how those things work, but yeah.
$250,000. The other, and then the one I love is $120,000.
Yep.
And then what's the first model called?
KRGT1 right now starts at $89,000.
$89,000. That thing's
all of those
beautiful.
are base prices, but there's seldom anything that affects the price except for maybe the complexity of the paint job. We've never really had any other upcharge on any of our motorcycles unless the paint job gets, complicated.
Who's doing the paints?
We have a few different painters that do it, but they're kind of specialized in, doing motorcycle paint or custom paint. Chris at Airtrix does some stuff for us.
Yeah.
And we use some guys in Anaheim Rod and Custom. It'd be nice to do our own thing, but in California it's pretty tough, and that's all. And these guys know what they're doing. They're really good. So.
EPA City.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, man, for doing the show.
Thanks for coming down, and thanks for having me.
Great bikes, and hit me up one day, and we'll go ride them.
For sure.
All right. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Grail right there. Visit their website. Check out their Instagram. These bikes are absolutely fantastic. Thank you, guys.